All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something pretty fascinating, a high-stakes strategic blueprint used by modern activist teachers. These are the educators right on the front lines, and they're pushing for a radical, grassroots reset of our schools. They're basically arguing that our education system has slowly morphed into this sort of industrial factory, and we need a fundamental shift to bring the focus back to where it belongs, the child.
Here's our roadmap for the breakdown. 1. The factory education trap. 2. Reclaiming teacher professional agency. 3. Redesigning for the child. 4. AI, bridge or trap. And finally, 5. The high-trust finished blueprint. Let's get right into it.
So I want you to think about this provocative question, because it really sits at the absolute core of the activist teacher's argument. Look at those two options. They're urgently pointing out that over the last 40 years, American education has essentially been optimized for industrial throughput and auditable data, completely sidelining human potential. It's a bold claim, right? The idea that we're out here managing a ledger instead of actually nurturing a mind. To really understand why they believe this, we've got to look back at the history.
Section 1. The factory education trap. To see how we got caught in this structural trap, we have to look at how federal policy completely shifted our focus over the last few decades. It's like over 3 generations of policy, both sides of the political aisle basically agreed, standardize everything. Starting in 1983 with the A Nation at Risk report, which really kicked off the whole failing schools narrative. Then you move into 2001 with No Child Left Behind, which made testing the ultimate measure of accountability. And finally, race to the top in 2009. Every time the policy iterated, federal funding became increasingly tied to standardized outcomes. Think about the immense pressure that creates. It cemented this massive incentive to quantify learning at all costs, always demanding measurable proof of a return on investment.
Now check out the incentives laid out here, because it's honestly a bit of a tragic mismatch. Up top, you have policymakers who need legislative defensibility. You have these massive publishing companies whose revenue relies entirely on contract renewals for those standardized tests, and you have district administrators who are structurally boxed in, basically just trying to avoid federal sanctions. But look at those bottom 2 rows. The folks with the least institutional power, the teachers and the students, are literally the only ones whose core incentives align with genuine learning, belonging, and growth. The activist educator argues, this isn't some grand conspiracy. It's just a structural trap where the people who desperately want to focus on the child are constrained by the people optimizing the system.
Which brings us to the crucial shift these educators are demanding. The activist blueprint insists we completely abandon what they call a systems fidelity model. That's a sterile, top-down environment obsessed with auditable data, compliance, publisher lock-in, and linear testing. It treats the policy pipeline as the actual goal. Instead, they are passionately advocating for a child-fidelity model. This model prioritizes the learner. It respects authentic authorship, leans heavily on a teacher's professional judgment, and values human growth over filling in bubble sheets. It's all about changing the fundamental unit of design from the policy right back to the child.
Section 2. Reclaiming teacher professional agency.
So how are activist educators practically fighting back against the deskilling of their profession and these rigid, quote-unquote, teacher-proof pacing guides? Well, this is where the pushback gets highly tactical. Enter the curriculum commons. By utilizing public, non-commercial, openly licensed repositories authored by teachers themselves, educators can totally bypass those vertically integrated publishers. The massive companies that write the standards, sell the textbooks, and then grade the tests. That closed loop leaves almost zero room for local innovation. The Commons restores their professional agency and completely disrupts that publisher oligopoly, letting teachers design high-engagement, cooperative learning units on their own terms.
But here's the million-dollar question. How do you measure success once you ditch the standardized test? The solution here is project defenses. You replace the cheap defensible bubble sheet with something that actually captures a student's active mastery. We're talking portfolio and performance-based assessments, where students have to demonstrate authentic authorship by presenting, debating, and reciting their work. It brings back absolutely crucial skills like oracy, which the factory model just threw out because a machine couldn't easily grade it. It's a real game changer because it powerfully treats a student's creative struggle as co-equal data to any standardized metric.
Section 3. Redesigning for the child.
All right, so how do we actually rebuild this system from the ground up without just creating a new set of compliance hoops to jump through? Activist teachers suggest grabbing the famous Stanford D-School design thinking approach and applying it directly to education. It's a 5-step, deeply human-centered process. Empathize, define structural interventions, ideate solutions, prototype small countermodels, and then test and iterate based on real classroom evidence.
By using this framework, they completely change the core question. They stop asking, how do we optimize the system for efficiency, and start asking, what kind of environment helps children become fully human? Let's zoom in on that very first step, empathize, because this is where the rubber really meets the road. It means grounding abstract policy in actual human stakes. The sources give a really brilliant example here. Imagine centering your design on a specific, vulnerable child, like a dyslexic 9-year-old. This child has a fully furnished listening comprehension palace, meaning they understand complex concepts perfectly fine, but they just need a decoding bridge built at their own pace, with their dignity kept totally intact. The current factory model? It tests that bridge as if it were the palace, absolutely devastating the kid's confidence. A child-fidelity model empathizes with that lived experience instead of just trying to optimize district-level aggregate data.
Section 4. AI. Bridge or trap? Whenever we talk about the future of the classroom today, AI is the giant elephant in the room, and we're at a massive fork in the road here. The activist educators are incredibly clear-eyed about the dangers. Look, AI doesn't have a built-in moral compass. It just inherits the incentives of whoever pays for it. If it's governed by the current edtech extraction economies, AI risks becoming a massive trap. We're talking adaptive platforms optimized merely for engagement, essentially mirroring the data extraction logic of social media. Even worse, it can make standardized testing cheaper and more frequent, deepening that behaviorist measurement culture and completely replacing authentic student cognition. It's a huge risk.
But, and this is a big but, if teachers are the ones controlling the incentive function, AI can be absolutely revolutionary. It can serve as that precise decoding bridge we just talked about for the dyslexic student, offering unbelievable accessibility. It can be a Socratic tool, restoring one-to-one oracy practice and providing intellectual sparring for kids who don't have private tutors at home to help them prepare for project offenses. It prompts, it questions, it elaborates, but it never does the thinking for them. Plus, it can drastically lower the cost for teachers to author their own open curriculum, which could finally break that publisher oligopoly once and for all.
Section 5. The high-trust Finnish blueprint.
If you're sitting there wondering, okay, does a high-trust teacher-led system actually work anywhere in the real world, or is this just a utopian dream? Proponents point straight to the Finnish model. It perfectly illustrates the child-fidelity model in action. Look at how structurally different this is. They completely decouple their funding from standardized testing outcomes, instantly removing that vicious trap. They explicitly protect teacher discretion, genuinely relying on their professional judgment. They establish curriculum experimentation zones, so innovation happens locally, right in the classroom, not top-down. And best of all, they measure success through broad quality indicators, student growth, active engagement, and a real sense of belonging. Now sure, critics will point out that Finland is a smaller, more homogeneous country, but the structural mechanics here absolutely prove that a powerful alternative to the factory model is entirely possible.
This quote really hits the nail on the head regarding the whole activist educator mindset. The goal is not anti-technology nostalgia. It is reclaiming education as a developmental, cultural, and civic practice. Children are not widgets, and schools should be designed as places for growth, not throughput. It's not about clinging to the past. It's about reclaiming the very soul and purpose of school. Restoring curiosity, play, and joy to learning isn't just some nice warm and fuzzy idea. It is a developmentally serious imperative. When you treat kids like widgets in a data pipeline, you just crush their potential.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer, and I want to leave you mulling over this one final critical thought. We've seen how the systems we build entirely dictate the outcomes we get. The push for child fidelity isn't just a walking debate for policymakers, it's for all of us. So when you look at the future of your local classrooms, ask yourself, what metrics do you want your schools to optimize for? Are we going to keep measuring the ledger, or are we going to start measuring the child? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. I hope this framework helps you see the classroom in a whole new light.